Today I'm going to teach you step by step how to make this super cute St. Patrick's Day wreath using the Deco Mesh Poof and Double Curl method. Welcome to Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Come on in. Before we get started on today's wreath tutorial, I just wanted to take a quick minute and welcome all of our new guests here on the channel. Stillwater's Wreath Designs is all about step-by-step DIY wreath making tutorials. We've got new tutorials uploading every single week. So if you like that sort of thing, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button and join us. And for my friends who have been here on the channel for a while, thank you for coming back. I so appreciate you. Friends, you'll find a full materials and supplies list for you below in the description of this video. So if you'd like to recreate this beauty, you can sure do so. Of course, if you would rather just purchase today's creation, I will leave my Etsy link for you below as well. We're going to build today's wreath on a 15-inch work wreath form. If you're new to wreath making, this is what a work wreath form looks like. It comes to you just like this. It's 15 inches in diameter. It's got two layers, the upper and the lower, and then all around both of the layers we have what are called ties. These are how we're going to anchor down our deco mesh. There are 18 ties in total. And so what we're going to do is with the upper level set of ties, just point those guys directly inward if they're not already looking that way. And then for the lower level set of ties, we're going to do just the opposite and point those guys outwards. So it basically looks like a sunshine. You'll want to go ahead and plug in your hot glue gun as well. So your wreath frame should look something like this. Before we start adding our deco mesh into the wreath frame, let's go ahead and prep our sign. We're going to use the super cute St. Patty's Day sign today. I'm going to cut off this hanger. We don't need that. So we'll just cut that guy right off. And then we're going to add a couple of cable mounts to the back of our sign. If you're new to wreath making and not yet familiar with cable mounts, this is what they look like. They're about 3/4 inch square, and this black side is the front facing side and the 3M side is the bottom. And so these are used to add to your signs and embellishments to help you anchor them down into your wreath. Definitely one of the first things I recommend for all new wreath makers to grab. So there's holes all the way around the bracket, which is how you can run your floral wire stems or pipe cleaners through the bracket to attach it into your wreath. And then the back side is just this super sticky 3M tape. You just peel that sticker off and then give it a good hard press. I always add two, one to either side. Doesn't need to be square, friends. Nobody's ever going to see it. Once you've given those a good hard push, then we're going to go ahead and grab our glue gun and just run a quick stripe of glue all the way around the perimeter of those brackets. So that glue is partially on the back of our sign and partially on our bracket. That just gives a little bit of extra strength to make sure that guy's not going to go anywhere. Once you've done that, you can set this off to the side to dry, and we're going to grab our wreath frame and begin adding deco mesh. And then we're going to grab our work wreath form and bring that back to our workstation. Let me show you the deco mesh that we'll be using today, friends. I've grabbed 3 different rolls of 10-inch deco mesh. We've got this pretty burlap color, a dark metallic green, and light metallic green. You're also going to need your scissors and a standard ruler. And today we're going to use the Deco Mesh Poof and Double Curl method. If you're new to working with Deco Mesh, friends, you will soon learn that Deco Mesh loves to fray. So anything that we can do as a creator to help reduce that fray is always ideal. And the Poof and Curl method is a great method for just that. So at this point, your wreath frame doesn't have a top or bottom. We are going to start on the lower level, any set of ties. We're going to take our deco mesh. I like to unroll it about 1 foot or so, 1.5 feet, so that it's curl side down. And the first thing we need to do is anchor our mesh down into our wreath. And so what I'm going to do is take my thumbs and keep them stationary and press down on my mesh, and then I'll use my other 8 fingers, or in my case 7 fingers, I'm nursing an injury, and I'm going to gather that mesh back into my hand, just like that. So now I've got this little tail. And what we're going to do, friends, is take that Deco mesh tail and just tuck it back underneath into our hand. And what that does is tuck away that raw edge, which helps to prevent the fray. So we're going to come to any set of lower level ties on our wreath frame, open them up into a wide V, take that Deco mesh tail, place it all the way down to the center of the V right there at the base, and we're going to give it a couple of tight twists to anchor that guy down, just like that. And we'll point those guys outwards again. So now we've got our Deco mesh anchored down, and now we can add our first poof. Go ahead and grab your standard ruler, and for this lower level, friends, we're going to add in 10-inch poofs. And to add in our poof, we're going to take our ruler and place that on the most recent set of ties we've used. We're going to come out to that 10-inch spot, and friends, not looking for perfection here, no one's going to be measuring. And then we're going to scrunch and gather our mesh into our hand, just like we did earlier. And what that does is then create our first 10-inch poof. So we're going to come to the very next set of lower level ties on our wreath base, open those guys into a wide V, take that pinch of mesh and add it all the way down to the base of that V. And then we're going to give those ties a couple of super duper tight twists and point them outwards. And we've just added our first 10-inch poof into the lower level of our frame. Let's do one more together, friends, and then we'll speed ahead. So again, you're going to take your ruler, place that on the most recent set of ties that you've used. Come out to that 10-inch mark, scrunch and gather that mesh, pinch that in your fingers. You'll come to the very next set of lower level ties, open them into a wide V, place that pinch of mesh all the way down to the base of that V, and give it a couple, 2 or 3 tight twists. And then point those guys outwards again. We just added our second 10-inch poof. So go ahead and add 10-inch poofs all the way around the lower level. And when it's time to add that last lower level poof, I'll meet you back here. Okay, let's go ahead and add in our last lower level poof. We're going to follow that same method, friends. So lay your ruler down on that last set of ties you've used. Come out to that 10-inch mark, pinch and gather that mesh. And for this last poof, we're going to add this guy right on top of where we anchored down our mesh when we began. So you're just going to gently untwist those ties, and then place that mesh right on top of where we anchored down our mesh in the beginning. And you guessed it, give those ties a couple of tight twists and point them outwards. And so now we've finished adding all of the poofs into the lower level of our wreath base, and now it's time to jump up to that upper level. So when we jump up to the upper level, guys, we're going to go directly above to the nearest set of ties to where we're going to make that jump. Let me zoom in here, and we're not going to make a poof. We're just going to unroll a bit of our Deco mesh, pull it cleanly and tautly up towards that upper level, make a V out of those closest set of ties, come in behind those set of ties, and then you're going to give it a couple of tight twists to anchor that guy to the upper level. So as you can see here, we've just got a nice clean bit of mesh coming from the lower level to the upper level. We've anchored it down on that first set of ties, and now we can go about adding our poofs. We're going to follow the same method we did earlier. The only difference is for the upper level, instead of your poofs being 10 inches, instead they're going to be 8. So you'll follow the same method. Place your ruler on that first set of upper ties that we've just anchored down to. Come out to that 8-inch mark. Go ahead and scrunch and gather that mesh like we did earlier. Come to the very next set of upper level ties. Open them into a wide V. Place that pinch of mesh all the way down to the base of your V. And give it a couple of tight twists. So we've just added our first 8-inch upper level poof. Go ahead and add in 8-inch poofs all the way around the upper level of your wreath base. And then when it's time to add our last poof, I'll meet you back here. Okay, it's time to add our last poof into our upper level. So we're going to follow the same method. Place your ruler on that most recent set of ties that you've used. Come out to that 8-inch mark. Scrunch and gather your mesh. And we're going to add this last poof right on top of where we made that Deco mesh jump from the lower to the upper level. So you're just going to open up those set of ties into a wide V. Place that mesh right on top, all the way down to the base. And give those ties a couple of tight twists. Now that we've added our last poof, it's time to cut away the excess remaining roll of our Deco mesh. So I'm going to take my hand and use it as a guard and lay it between the neighboring poof and the Deco mesh that we want to cut away. And once you've done that, friends, you're just going to come up about 1.5 inches or so and cut away your mesh. Just like that. So now I finished adding the poofs into our wreath base, and it's looking pretty good, but it's still fairly light and airy, and so we need to give that guy some more coverage. And so now we'll move on to step 2 of adding our Deco mesh into the wreath, and that will be to add curls. So go ahead and set your wreath base off to the side. And now we're going to cut our 2 green rolls into smaller pieces to add the curls into our wreath. And remember earlier I told you that there were 18 sets of ties in total on your wreath frame. So we're going to need 18 pieces of the dark green and 18 pieces of the light green. And for curls, we don't need very large pieces, friends. You're basically going to cut 18 8-inch pieces of each Deco mesh colored. So either with your scissors and a ruler, or what I would recommend if you're new to wreath making, your self-healing mat and rotary cutter will go ahead and cut 18 pieces of each color at 8 inches in length. If you're not familiar with the self-healing mat and the rotary cutter, the self-healing mat is what you see in the background. This particular mat is 36 inches by 24, and it allows you to cut right on it and not harm your workstation area. It's also got measurements for you so that you don't have to bother with grabbing your ruler or tape measure. And then the rotary cutter is basically like a mini pizza cutter and lets you cut your Deco mesh in nice, clean, quick lines. So once you've identified the mark of where you want to cut, you'll just take your rotary cutter and run that right up that mesh. And it's going to give you that nice, clean line. So go ahead and cut 18 pieces of the dark green and 18 pieces of the light green in 8-inch pieces, and then I'll meet you back here. Once you've got all of your Deco mesh pieces cut, go ahead and grab your wreath frame and bring that back to your work area. And I would also recommend that you grab a chip clip or a clothespin or something for this next step. Just makes it a little bit easier. And we're going to add 2 curls to every single set of ties on the entire wreath. 1 dark green and 1 light green. And to make a curl, it's super easy, guys. You're just going to take your Deco mesh, place it in your work area, curl side up, and roll that guy into a cylindrical tube. Just like that. So it's about 1 inch or so, 1.5 inches in diameter in the center, and then of course those ends flare out a bit. Then you're going to take your clip, just pinch that guy in the middle and set it off to the side. And then we'll grab our light green and follow that same step. It's laying in our work area, curl side up, And we're just going to roll that guy into a cylindrical tube. Just like that. And then we'll take those two curls and lay one on top of the other so it kind of looks like an X. We're going to come to any set of ties on our wreath. Doesn't matter where you start, because remember, every single set of ties will be getting the two curls. You're going to place that X all the way down to the base of your set of ties. And you guessed it, give those guys a couple of tight twists. We've just added our first set of double curls into our wreath. Let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. So we're going to grab our first piece of Deco mesh, roll that guy into a cylindrical tube, pinch it in the middle with our clip and set it off to the side. Then we'll grab our light green, place it in our work area, curl side up, and roll this guy into a cylindrical tube as well. And then we'll place one on top of the other so that they look like a loose X. We'll come to the next set of ties on our wreath base, open those ties into a wide V, place those curls all the way down to the base, and give it a couple of tight twists. We just added our second set of curls. So go ahead and add two curls to every set of ties on your wreath base, one light green and one dark green, and then I'll meet you back here. Once you have all of your Deco mesh curls added into your wreath base, it should look something like this, and look how nice and full our wreath base is. And we are finished adding Deco mesh into our base. So the next step is ribbon tails. Let's go ahead and set this guy off to the side and grab our wired ribbon. Here's the 4 different ribbon types I've chosen for our wreath. I've got 2 that are 2.5 inches wide and 2 that are 1.5 inches wide. I just recommend that whenever you choose your ribbon, that you always choose wired ribbon. And we're going to add 2 sets of ribbon tails to every single set of ties on our wreath frame. And remember, we've got 18 sets of ties. So we're going to need 9 pieces of every single ribbon type, cut at 10 inches in length. So let me show you a quick way to measure and trim your ribbon. So the easiest way to trim your ribbon quickly, friends, so that you don't have to cut one piece at a time, is to measure out 10 inches in length. We're going to make 10-inch tails. So come out to that 10-inch mark. And then once you've identified that 10-inch mark, just fold your ribbon accordion style for the total number of pieces that you need. In our case, we'll be needing 9 pieces of each ribbon type. So we're at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Once you've folded that into the 9 pieces, go ahead and trim off the excess bit of ribbon. So now you've got this nice little accordion stack of ribbon. And what I'm going to do, friends, is just with 2 folds at a time, which will essentially be 4 pieces, I'm going to angle trim my ribbon tails. And so I'm just going to go ahead and trim those. You can also dovetail if you prefer. And then we'll do the next stack. Just know the strength of your scissors and cut as many at once as you can. And then leaving that ribbon stack together, spin it around to the other side and do the same thing. And so what we've essentially done here is measure out all the pieces that we need, and we've trimmed those ends at the same time. So go ahead and repeat the same process with all 4 ribbon types. Remember, you're going to need 9 pieces of each ribbon type, cut at 10 inches in length. Trim those ends in your preferred method, and I'll meet you back here. Once you've got your ribbon tails all trimmed and ready to go, we're going to also cut a small roll of woven, they call this ribbon, but it's just a really pretty loosely woven 2.5 inch ribbon that we're going to add into half of our ribbon tails. This actually comes from the Dollar Tree. It's not very long, so you're probably going to need 1 to 2 rolls. And we're going to need 9 pieces of this cut at 8 inches in length. And because of this loosely woven pattern, friends, you don't need to dovetail or angle trim your ends. Just give that a straight cut. So go ahead and cut 8 pieces, and then I'll meet you back here. Now that we've got all of our ribbon tails trimmed, let me show you the combination that I'm going to use. And remember, we're going to add 2 tails to every single set of ties on our wreath base. So combination number 1 is going to be the 2.5 inch glitter shamrock paired with a 1.5 inch burlap and white polka dot. And then ribbon combination number 2 is going to be the 2.5 inch greens colored plaid with a 1.5 inch shamrock. And we'll also be laying one of the pieces of our woven ribbon from the Dollar Tree into those bundles as well. At this point, friends, our wreath still doesn't have a top or bottom, so you can start anywhere in your wreath base that you would like to. You're also going to want to grab a small pair of snips so that we can do some trimming as we go. Let me show you how adding the ribbon tails in works. It's super easy. You're just going to lay one ribbon tail on top of the other. Doesn't matter which you lay first. I prefer to place the 1.5 inch on top of the 2.5 inch. You're going to eyeball to find that center point, or if you would prefer, you can fold that guy in half to find your center. Once you've found that center, you're going to pinch and pleat your tails and then kind of fold them into a loose V over your thumb. And then you'll come to any set of ties on your wreath frame. Spread those ties into a wide V. Place your ribbon tails down to the base of that V. Give those ties 2 or 3 super tight twists. And then take your snips and trim off the remaining bits of those ties, because that's the last thing we'll be adding in. I just take my fingers and curl those ties back and under, and then I'm going to fluff my ribbon tails. And by fluff, friends, all I really am doing here is pulling them away from the center of the wreath into a loose V. That's all there is to it. Let's do one more set together, and then we'll speed ahead. I'm going to alternate back and forth between my ribbon pairings. For my next set, I'm going to lay the 2.5 inch greens plaid down first. On top of that, I'm going to lay the pretty woven ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and then lastly, the 1.5 inch shamrock. Again, I'm going to eyeball to find that center, pinch and pleat in the middle, fold that into a loose V over my thumb. I'll come to my next set of ties here on my wreath base. They're opened into a wide V. I've placed my ribbon tails all the way down to the base of that V, and now I'm giving those ties 2 or 3 super tight twists, and then we're going to trim off those excess bits of ties. We'll curl those guys back out of the way so nobody sees them, and we're going to fluff out those tails, just pulling them away from the center of our wreath into a loose V. Just like that. And that's all there is to it. So go ahead and add your ribbon tails throughout your entire wreath base, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, I've got all of my ribbon tails added into my wreath, and look how stinking cute this is coming out to be. And just lots of different depth and dimension with all the different greens. So now it's time for the next step. We're going to add some embellishments in. These are Shamrock picks. It's a package of 6, and forgive me, friends, I don't remember if these came from Hobby Lobby or the Dollar Tree. They're on little wooden skewers, and they should just pull right off. If not, you can use your snips. We're going to need 9 of these Shamrocks. So I'm just going to pull off all of those skewers. They're actually pretty nice wooden skewers. I'm going to just throw them in a mason jar that I have off to the side and keep them for a rainy day. And so when we added our ribbon tails in, we've got the 2 sets of combinations. We've got the first set, which is the 2 ribbons and then the piece from the Dollar Tree, that pretty woven ribbon. And then we've got the next second combination, which is the burlap with white polka dots and then the big glittery shamrocks. We're going to add a shamrock to every set of ribbon tails that only has the two. I'm just going to look at it and see which side looks prettier, if there's any such thing. I'm going to put a dollop of glue, about 2 full squirts, right there on that shamrock. And then I'm going to come to my ribbon tail and I'm just going to push that down right where those ties once were and give it about a 15-second hold. And so essentially we'll be adding the shamrock to every other set of tails. So go ahead and add your shamrocks throughout your entire wreath base, every other set of tails. Make sure you give them a good 10-second hold, and then I'll meet you back here. Oh my goodness, you guys, I am loving, loving, loving this wreath. So we've got just one more step and then we're finished. It's time to add our sign down in. Make sure you've given those shamrocks a good 10 minutes or so to dry before we start adding in the signs. So remember, we had added the mounting brackets and put some glue around them earlier. And now to secure our sign into our wreath, we're going to do so with some 20-gauge floral wire stems. I'm just going to fold them in half loosely just to identify that center point. Run that floral wire stem right through that bracket and give it a couple of twists so it doesn't slide around on us. Then we'll do the same thing at the opposite end. You can place your sign anywhere you'd like to on your wreath. I'm going to lay mine right in the center. So I'm going to just find that center point and poke those floral wire stems right down through the mesh. That's why I prefer floral wire stems over pipe cleaners for this type of wreath. So I'm going to hold that guy in place and flip it around. You want to make sure that those floral wire stems go around 2 of those rings on our wreath base. Going to give it a couple of loose twists here. I want to flip it back over in just a second, make sure I'm still happy with that placement. And I always try to take my floral wire stem at least once around one of those crossbars just to help keep that guy from sliding. And you want to just give it a couple of loose twists here, friends. Flip it back over and make sure you're happy with that placement. And I am. So then we'll come back around, give each of those floral wire stems 2 or 3 more tight twists, and then we're going to take our tips and trim off that excess bit of wire and toss those bits away. And then I like to take my needle nose pliers and just pinch those ends together and kind of curl them back and into the wreath. That way, if somebody happens to grab the wreath right there, they won't get poked. And then I just put a pea-size amount of glue right over that wire to cover those ends. Oh my goodness, you guys, this turned out so stinking cute. If any of those ribbon tails or Deco mesh curls got scrunched or curled underneath your wreath, just pull them back out. This beauty is finished, friends. I sure hope you enjoyed creating with me today. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my little channel to grow. Thanks for spending time with me today. Happy crafting.